Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people all over the world making others' lives better, whether that's locally, globally, or digitally. Rotary International is well over 1 million people in many, many countries, 193, something like that. Many countries around the world, 36,000 clubs around the world, another 9,000 Rotaract clubs, a lot of folks who just care about making the world a better place. Our particular club, the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley, is both online and asynchronous. So it is an especially flexible club for those who have a heart for service but have crazy busy schedules and are in that space of like, I need something a little different. We've got a cool group of people waiting to say hello to you. Speaking of cool people, our speaker today is in Alabama, Dr. Isabel Scarinci. I first learned about her from member Elton, who said, oh, you got to read this story in the Rotarian about this wonderful work being done related to cervical cancer in Alabama by a team of people led by a Rotarian doctor. Long story less long, Isabel agreed to talk to us and tell the story of the work that is happening with Operation Wipeout. And we are excited to share that story with you this week. So, Isabel, thank you so much for being a part of our effort to tell stories of great things happening around the world, and we welcome you to the Rotary Club of Silicon Valley.
Well, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be with y'all. Yeah, I'm in Alabama, so we say y'all. And give me some time to really share the great work that our club and other clubs are really doing in Alabama. Cancer, we are all affected by cancer. Everybody is. A friend, a family member, all of us have been touched by cancer. Some with good outcomes, some with not so good outcomes. Some cancers can be detected early, some cannot. But there's only one cancer that can be eliminated. And I never thought that we could talk about cancer elimination, and this is cervical cancer. So for the ones who do not know much about cervical cancer, I'll give you a very brief description. Now that we know that cervical cancer is mainly caused by a virus, the human papillomavirus or HPV. So over 90% of the cervical cancers are caused by this virus that is sexually transmitted. Most of us will be exposed to that virus in our lifetime. Every sexually active person will be exposed to 90% will be exposed to this virus. But the good news is that the virus clears on its own. We are only concerned if the virus persists. So you have infection with the virus, persistence, change in the cells, precancer, cancer. So once they figure out the national history, the natural history of cervical cancer, it opened the door for two major tools that now we have available in most countries. In the US, it's free or covered by health insurance. It's HPV vaccination that we need to vaccinate preferably children. It starts at age 9 before they are exposed to the virus because it's a preventive vaccine. Kids that are 9 to 14, 2 doses in the US, and 15 and to 26 is 3 doses. People up to 45 can get the vaccine, is approved by the FDA, but that is based on discussion with their healthcare provider. So that's one, and it's covered by health insurance, or for uninsured kids in the US is covered by Vaccines for Children, a federal program. And then and because now we have HPV, we know that's the cause, we have HPV testing. So in the past, we did a lot of the pap smear, that's the changes in the cell. Now we can detect the infection by the virus. And then follow up and treatment, because then you can detect it even before it turns into cancer. So here we are, we have the tools. So why do we still have such a burden of cervical cancer, including Alabama, that has very high, one of the highest incidence and mortality in the United States? So my club, we work a lot in Sri Lanka. That was our first cervical cancer project for Sri Lanka to be, and they are very much on their way to eliminate cervical cancer. It's the first low and middle income country that probably will eliminate cervical cancer. And then one day I came to my club and said, I feel like an imposter. Here we are working in Sri Lanka and other countries when we have a problem right here. There are some counties in Alabama that has the incidence and the mortality of countries like Guatemala or Nicaragua. And so my club jumped in. We have a large club. We have over 600 members. It's a very active club. And then where do we start? We started in a county with the highest burden of disease. Is Chambers County that has the incidence similar to countries in Central America. And that's where we started. We mobilized the Rotary Club there, and the Rotarians jumped in, and we started working in that county, and very successful. And one of the Rotarians there, Butch Busby, who has been the champion, a retired dentist, said, we need to go to the school system. There where the kids are. So if we reach the kids, we reach the parents. And the superintendent jumped in with both feet and have supported us. And the high school students work on they develop a HPV vaccination campaign. Vaccination is key, wipe out HPV. That's their singing song. And there we started. And then we work a lot with the Alabama Department of Public Health. The Department of without government, if it's a state, if it's a country, it's very hard for us to get to elimination, because us Rotarians, we have the tools, we have the infrastructure, we know how to do logistics, but we need the government to make it sustainable. And the Alabama Department of Public Health jumped in, and we are the only state in the United States with a plan to eliminate cervical cancer, which is amazing. So the state health officer launched the plan because we knew that if a Rotary launched it, wouldn't have any teeth. If the university launched it, would not have any teeth. But if the state health officer launches it, does have meaning. And then we started working there. $0. A lot of times we think about the global grants, what are important. In Sri Lanka, that grant, the global grant, was very important for us to develop the infrastructure. But sometimes it's really for us to start and mobilizing people, because the most important thing that we have in Rotary is not money, it's credibility. So I had never been to Chambers County. And when we found out that that was the county with the highest burden of disease, we picked up the phone, called Rotary. And they are the ones who open all the doors for us, with the superintendent, with the health department, with the business partners. And that's how we started. And it's called Operation Wipeout. You can go to our website, is operationwipeout.org. And the goal is not that it doesn't belong to one organization. It's really Rotary mobilizing everybody to do what they can in their communities. As I mentioned, because we know the infection from the virus it's a very slow cancer, it takes a long time to develop. We have so many opportunities as Rotary, so many entry points. For instance, now we are working with Guatemala-Sur in Guatemala, and we're not going to do screening because that country, the infrastructure for follow-up and treatment is not there. The government support may be more limited. So what good does it to screen and then we cannot follow up? So we have so many entry points. So now we're mobilizing the entire district and some clubs. We just had a summit a few weeks ago, where then the clubs can decide where they start. I'm going to just do awareness. I'm going to just do vaccination. I have a good relationship with the largest employer in that county that I can do things there with the employer. And we developed, as you can see in our website, different handouts, like if you're a business leader, what can you do? If you are a teacher, what you can do. If you're a cancer survivor, what you can do. Because it's not about me getting screened or get the kids vaccination. For us to Rotary, we want everybody to see that I can play a role. I can go to my crochet group and educate and disseminate. And and that's what we are doing. And with the goal really for us to not be one of the last in incidence and mortality, because it is a challenge in rural counties in particular. Like one of the things that the Alabama Department of Public Health is doing, women who would have an abnormal cervical cancer screening in a rural county would need to come to Birmingham or go to Montgomery. Now they train nurse practitioners where they go and do the colposcopy, the follow-up where women were screened. And that has been a game changer. So it's a simple thing, but if we train nurse practitioners to travel instead of women to travel, can really be an amazing, the adherence to follow up has really been impressive. Now, why I am on this mission, why I believe we can do it, is because I had polio. I was 8 months old, and I grew up in Brazil. This is not an Alabama accent. So I have been here for over 30 years, but the Portuguese is still there. And I had polio in both arms and both legs. I walk with a cane. I have the disability, and I recover both arms. And I do have the alter EMG and all, but and I grew up. My mom was I grew up in a small town. My mom was a teacher, a math teacher, but a very determined woman who would take me door to door. She would dress me in shorts and we would show my legs. And we say, you do not want this to happen to your child. But in a very positive way, that I was the star in the region. And we would get 100% vaccination. And then that's how I grew up. And then was about 12, she said, we need to split. My brother would carry the cooler, and I knew what to say. I would say, you don't this happen to any of your children. I would get all the prizes, all the accolades. And then in the 80s is when Rotary picked that up, and to commit to cancer, to polio elimination, eradication in that case. And that's when I joined Rotaract in Brazil and continued to do what I knew how to do. So if you think about, was the vaccine that contributed to the eradication of polio in the world? Yes, but not really, because in 1988, when Rotary started, the vaccine was mandated by WHO in 1974. So 14 years later, we still had 350,000 cases in the world. It's not until Rotary really jumped in, and people like my mother, that really made a difference. So what is the analogy to cervical cancer? It's the same thing. We have the vaccine, and it's available in most countries. We have screening, and now it's no longer really in the hands of only the medical community. Now we know how to do it. Rotary has the infrastructure. We can use the polio infrastructure to get this there. And and see the elimination of another disease in my lifetime, that will be amazing. So a lot of kids in this country, especially young, when they are in their 20s, because I'm younger than the last group in the US who had polio. I had polio in 1963. So now you know my age. I was 8 months old. So they see me limping and they say, "What happened to your leg?" And I say, "I had polio." The best part is when they look at me and say, "What is polio?" Then I look up and I tell my mom, "We did it." And if you ask, before she passed off metastatic breast cancer, and I asked her, I said, "Did you ever think that we would eradicate polio in the world?" And she said, "I didn't, but I did my part." So I think that now we can do our part. We know how to do it with cervical cancer. So I think really is a gift for us Rotarian to be able to work on a mission that we can see the elimination. Some of us may not see the end. I don't know, but I truly believe that will be a day that they was gonna say, "What is cervical cancer?" And that will open doors to other HPV-associated cancers, because now we have a major increase in oropharyngeal cancer that's HPV-associated. We have anal cancer, we have penile cancer, vaginal, vulvar. It's just those we cannot yet talk about elimination because we don't truly understand the natural history like we do with cervical cancer. But as we give the message of hope to others, that we can eliminate, we'll keep the research will come with it, and we'll have that movement like we have had with polio. Those are my words I want to share with you today, but I'll be honest with you, accepting this invitation was selfish, because I want to see more people believing that we can embark on this together. And if you go to their website, we even develop a navigation tool for Rotary Clubs. If you go under resources, like how you get started, identify a champion, an expert, and I will always be available if you have questions or lessons learned. But that's my intention of talking to you today, is that no matter where we are, we can work on this mission. Thank you.
Wonderful, Isabel. Thank you so much. I'm going to take just a minute and we're going to take a look at the site so that people understand. This is operationwipeout.org. And while it is specific to the effort happening in Alabama, there is a lot of information and a lot of messaging here that can be useful for anyone working on a similar effort in their communities in different parts of the world. I'm going to zero in for the first question on colposcopy, which is a term I did not know before you started. And can you tell us a little bit about what a colposcopy entails?
So, gosh, we have nurses here that are more experts than me. So if an HPV testing or a PEP test is abnormal, it's a light. I mean, for lay people, it's a magnifying light. And if the nurses please correct me, that you can see the cervix. And then a lot of times take a biopsy if needed, to really then to determine what the follow-up is going to be. And now they can do, like with the nurses, what they do, they have a cell phone, an iPhone, that then they can send the images, to GYN, that they can double check and all that.
Got it. I am imagining that there are at least a couple of things that create hesitation in communities about getting the vaccine. One is this sense of, okay, what are the procedures? What will I have to go through? The other is that in many rural communities, there is some skepticism about vaccines. Uh, I'm curious, especially with that second question, how you help people overcome that concern. You know, like does it have to do with the partnerships? Does it have to do with kind of the nature of the vaccine? How does that work?
Yeah, when we start working on the vaccine was mostly that reluctance that you're giving the kids permission to engage in sexual intercourse. That I don't find those as barriers anymore. Mostly it's the skepticism and the lack of trust on the vaccine because COVID didn't help us, you know. So a lot of times the way I train our medical students and the way I do it is people talk a lot about vaccine hesitancy or skepticism. I tend to ask questions. If you're a parent, I'll say, what are your concerns? Sometimes we think, especially us in the medical community, we think that if we talk a lot and if we educate, they will change their minds. Now, you may be worried about safety, then I'll focus on safety. You may be worried about side effects. I'll focus on side effects. So I think that a lot of it is this skepticism is really we need to see because what we think sometimes is the barrier is not the barrier. And if the parent or that individual tell us what the concerns are, then we can address it in a very factual and my recommendation is always stay with the facts, brief, simple, because if the person has more questions, then you can go in more details. But really go, what are your concerns is usually my question. And then I can narrow down and address this individual's concerns. Now, it's rural, but also the skepticism right now, because since COVID is really everywhere. So that, it's not only rural, but, a lot of parents are concerned about this. Mostly we say the message is always safe, is effective, is a vaccine that has been around for over 20 years. And other things cost that parents are concerned about.
Got it. Let's shift over to Elton. He has a question for you about the vaccines as well.
Yeah, so I want to ask you two questions and then make a brief statement. One, I want to ask you whether you recommend boys be vaccinated and why. And do we know yet whether you can pass it by kissing? But I'm old enough that this story has shocked me 3 times. I can remember when we didn't know that cancer was a communicable disease. So when I first heard the story, I was shocked by that. And then I was shocked when we developed a vaccine against a cancer. And then I was shocked again a couple of years ago when I think it was Scotland, it was a country that has a unified medical record. No girl that had ever been vaccinated on the correct schedule got this cancer. Zero. It was 100% effective vaccine. So this has just been such an amazing story. So should you vaccinate boys? Can you get it from kissing? And you focused on cervical cancer, but this vaccine has a lot of spillover and vaccinates against a lot of other cancers. Maybe you could mention what they are.
So should we vaccinate boys in a country with resources like the United States, like Scotland, like other countries? Yes. So because then it protects them from the other HPV-associated cancers. Oropharyngeal, we expect that boys, now men, are going to surpass the incidence among women and HPV-associated oropharyngeal cancer in men. So it protects them from oropharyngeal, penile, and anal cancer. Now, when we go to a country that has limited resources, and I was in, the American Association for the American Society for Clinical Oncology a couple of years ago, put a task force together for people from all over the world, for us experts, for us to make recommendations. If you have limited resources, medium resources or high resources, but it still be evidence-based. So I was in the vaccine group. So for a country with very limited resources and say, we will have this much money, we say prioritize girls. Because in a heterosexual country, eventually we're going to have what we call herd immunity. So if you think of resources, no, you prioritize girls. If you have more resources like the US, then yes. No, it's a sexually transmitted. You need to have more the sexual contact, and a lot of times I'm working with the high school students in Chambers County, and always the questions, how about oral sex? Now that's sex. So yes, you can get that through oral sex. Scotland has been amazing. I mean, the data from Scotland is so strong. That is the first country that has that long-term data, and it's really amazing, and it's true. Zero cervical cancer cases in those women.
Along medical lines, you mentioned that 90% of people are exposed to the HPV. What is it that separates those? Do we know what it is that separates those who get the cancer from those who do not?
Not really. No. Because we are concerned. That's why we don't do HPV testing in young women. We start HPV testing in 30 or older. That's the recommendation in the US, because then is the persistence of the virus. People who do not clear the virus that is at risk for high-risk HPV. There are over 100 types of HPV, but there are a few that in this country, in the US, we have a vaccine that is a non-valent. It's 9 strains of the virus, because it's also cover genital warts, because HPV can also cause genital warts. Most countries use outside the US, especially low middle income countries, they get the quadrivalent, that is for high risk types.
Got it. Let's shift the last few questions to the Rotary involvement in the effort. So, you're a member of the Rotary Club of Birmingham. You mentioned Butch Busby. There's essentially that need in any club to have someone who's willing to step up and tell the story in order for something to become an effort that is rallied around by the entire club. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened in your case? Like in your club, what were the things that happened such that people really rallied around this cause?
Well, Butch is so I think that's the fascinating thing, how we started. So we are a club of over 600 members, very large, one of the largest, I think the largest in the US. And then we go to Lafayette, that is not Lafayette, it's Lafayette in Alabama. So we go to Lafayette, that is a small town with 20 members. And then we identify Butch, this retired dentist, who said, I'm going to take this on and mobilize. So now we are working with other clubs. One is a pest control guy, a cook's pest control. So it's somebody with the passion and somebody who can mobilize people, and people who are not afraid of going to Sandy and say, Sandy, can you do this? Can you do that? I'm very good at that. And for my club, I think the polio resonated with us, because the first chairman of the Polio Plus was from my club, Dr. Leslie Wright. So polio is so part of our, started. And so I think that is also what motivate my club and to get behind this. The other thing that are for other Rotary clubs that I think that's important, put that as part of your strategic 5-year strategic plan. Because if you change presidents, if you change leadership that now want to do something else, it is part of your strategic plan. And cervical cancer elimination is part of our strategic plan for my club. So, and I'm trying to put it on the district, it's a strategic plan too, because then it's there. So you continue the commitment.
All right. And another question from the chat is about global grants. Has there been a global grant in Alabama related to this?
No, haven't. We really have so far, it's a different model. I'm a researcher. I have millions of dollars in research. So usually the mentality a lot of times is, oh, you have the money, you do it. So this one, we don't. So Rotary does what, if we have a summit, like we had a few weeks ago, the Rotary pay for lunch, ADPA, the Alabama Department of Public Health helped to pay for the materials. So people come together. So it has worked for us, so nobody's holding that pot of gold. And so far for us has worked well, because then if you go to our website and see the partners, and anybody can be a partner, we ask how you're going to contribute to Operation Wipeout. Not in money, but in things you can do. And that in a way, actually, especially for a Rotary, is easier, because let's say you're a school teacher. You're going to say, I'm going to go talk to my superintendent and get my school involved. Or I'm going to talk to my employees and give time off for the women to go get screened or or the parents to get their kids vaccinated. So that model so far has worked. That doesn't mean that if people want to make donations, we don't take them. Of course we do, because we need resources. But it's not no organization is holding all those resources.
So last question before we wind things down. Could you repeat again the age ranges where there are recommendations for vaccines? You mentioned that during your presentation, and I'd love you to repeat that. Like at what ages do people recommend? Is it recommended that they get the vaccine? Which groups? If you could summarize that, that would be great.
Yeah, we should start. The recommendation is 11, 12, but we can start as early as 9. And up to 14 years of age is 2 doses, and 15 and older is 3 doses because of immunogenicity. So they need 3 doses. Now, some countries, and the data from the World Health Organization is pretty compelling. Some countries have moved to 1 dose. Australia, I think Scotland has moved to 1 dose. So because the data is very convincing that 1 dose is sufficient. Interestingly enough, in the US is always a slow adopter. Even screening, we shouldn't be doing PAPs, but we still do it. And we do co-testing. In fact, we do a lot of women, we do PAP and HPV testing. And again, has to do with resources. But the vaccination is 9 to 14, 2 doses, 15 to 26, 3 doses, and 27 to 45 is based on a discussion with your healthcare provider.
Excellent. All right. So I am going to wind things down, and then we'll hand things back to Isabel for the final word. I'd like to introduce the group that we have on the recording as well. When I call your name, just wave if your camera's on. Guest of the club is Elliot Campbell from the Rotary Club of Santa Cruz Sunrise. From our club here in the Bay Area, Sandy, a nurse who's been on many cleft palate surgery trips and has represented Rotary well in that regard as well. My partner in the programs world and the mind behind our podcast efforts, that's Elton. In Houston, Texas, Rory, who is the most faithful member of the, the program's attending crowd in our club. Our treasurer in Italy, near Pescara, the town of Casalbordino, is Cecilia. My name is Rushton. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area as well. All of you who have been watching this, if you want to learn more about Isabel and the work of Operation Wipeout, take some time after we finish to go onto the page where you found this program, whether it's our podcast or our video perhaps on the YouTube channel or on our SiliconValleyRotary.com page, and take a look at the full information there and the links that you can follow. We hope that you will come and catch more of the meetings and presentations that we share that give us the energy to keep going, to make great things happen in the lives of others. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Isabel, what would you like people to have clearly in mind as they finish this recording?
My message for Rotarians is don't focus on your credibility. You have a lot of credibility in the community, and people in the communities trust you. So that, don't forget that. And sometimes we don't use that enough. And we promote the vaccine, promote education. The way we do it is that we do not tell any parent you should get your kids vaccinated. We say we are here to do the information, to provide the information. You are the parent. You know what's best for your children. So then all we can do is to provide the information, the education, and facilitate access. A lot of rural areas, access is a problem. The lack of access is real. So whatever we can do to advocate, for increasing access in our state, in our county, in our communities. So play the role where you see you can play. And then I think I want to go back to my mom. And she didn't believe we would be here today, and she would have a daughter that will be still walking at the age of 63, but she did her part. And so that's all. So if you can do your part, we're going to get there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Well,
and
thank
we'll see you next week.